This is why you should ignore Dave Ramsey, Dennis Prager, Susie Orman, the mainstream media, and Joe Biden. Everybody's trying to tell you to be afraid of inflation. But I'm here to tell you corporations love inflation. Yes, it is against you, but probably not in the way that you think about it. Or somebody has not taught you the sophisticated way of looking at inflation. If you make a minor adjustment, which I'm going to get into, inflation will not particularly harm you. The mainstream media, all of it, including Fox, will tell you how terrible inflation is and how Americans are suffering because of inflation. If you listen to the remedial finance gurus like Dave Ramsey and Dennis Prager and Susie Orman, they'll also have you gnashing your teeth, pulling out your hair, and wearing sackcloth over inflation. If you can get that reference, leave a comment below. What do all of these have in common? They treat you like utter infants when it comes to money. Facts. We know that Brandon is the most corrupt president to ever take the seat of the most powerful man on the planet. We know he is not running the show. We know he is literally listening to special interests. We know he is in bed with big tech and other giant corporations. We know that these giant corporations were crying all the way to the bank when local businesses were shutting down, left and right. We know that these giant corporations were crying all the way to the bank when they flipped the script to offer employees $12 to $15 an hour for jobs that paid minimum wage months ago, further pushing small businesses out of the market, but also firing millions of people, mostly women, because only the best were hired at each pay scale. Financial education. If you are told to get rid of all of your debt, save your money in a bank, and create a retirement account, that is a recipe to make you horribly poor and to serve your masters, the bank industry and corporation. If you are referred to as a consumer, financial education is supposed to be kept from you as much as possible. It is modern day slavery. Anyone who would dare teach you actual financial education is either met with life problems or they are whisked away to only teach the children of the super rich. Imagine professional athletes paid millions going broke. Imagine boxers making hundreds of thousands of dollars each fight, living on Skid Row afterward with lifelong medical problems and bills. Meanwhile, the super rich are taught wealth maintenance classes at the community club. The super rich are offered memberships into hedge funds with a buy-in of at least $1 million and a minimum holding that is money for 10 years. Do you think the super rich are told that inflation is a terrible thing? Do you? Let me answer that for you. No, they're not. Why are the super rich not bothered by inflation at all? It's not just because they have a whole bunch of money and that they can afford to pay $6 a gallon for gas. That's not it. And how is it that the super rich consider inflation a great thing? Mind-blowing financial fact about inflation. Inflation is great depending on who you are. Let me repeat that. Inflation is great depending on who you are and how you have your money tied up. What does inflation actually do? Inflation is the decline of purchasing power of a given currency over time. A quantitative estimate of the rate at which the decline in purchasing power occurs can be reflected in the increase of an average price level of a basket of selected goods and services in an economy over some period of time. That's literally the literal definition of inflation. Inflation can be contrasted with deflation, which occurs when the purchasing power of money increases and prices decline. You have also been told that deflation is bad. Your dollar going further, your dollar buying more. Deflation is bad? Imagine paying $1 for gas. No, 75 cents a gallon for gas. And being told that that is a bad thing. Oh, that's a bad thing. Inflation can be construed as either good or bad, depending upon which side it takes and how rapidly the change occurs. Generally speaking, higher inflation harms savers because it erodes the purchasing power of the money they have saved. However, it can benefit borrowers because the inflation-adjusted value of these outstanding debts shrinks over time. If you borrow $100 and $100 at that time buys you a big screen TV and you put down $1 and take a loan out for $99, but the next year it requires $300 to purchase that same TV, that means you have financed basically $300. And that's the value of your loan now. What if all of a sudden you sold that loan? You would get $300. That's inflation. You get it? You get the example now? Inflation is higher than it's been in 30 years. But corporate profits are soaring the most since 1950. 1950 is a lot longer time than 30 years ago. Companies just aren't just raising prices to cover the cost of inflation. They're padding their margins on top of it. So they're not just raising the price of butter 5 cents. They're raising the price of butter to double what it was yesterday. The ability to charge more is making some employers more comfortable with paying higher wages. You want $15 an hour? We're going to raise a stick of butter to cost $6. Here's your $15 an hour. Or we can just hire robots. I went shopping yesterday, and basically me charging the thing and all the questions that came up on the little screen is the same that a robot would be doing. The woman standing behind the register had almost nothing to do with the transaction. She was just there and put the groceries from the table to the bag. You have already the self-checking out registers where you put the groceries in a bag and the transaction is still handled by a machine. And that's exactly what's going on with me in front of her. You shouldn't have asked for $15 an hour. You should have asked for $5 an hour. You should have said, we want everybody in the country to work. We want to charge you $5 an hour. Pay us $5 an hour to work. We want to reduce minimum wage $5. And you know what? In 2 years, we want to reduce that to $4 an hour. If you did that, do you think we would have a border crisis? I want you to think about stuff. I want you to think long term. I want you to think 100 years down the road. I keep telling you, you asking for $15 an hour for a minimum wage job is going to usher in the age of the robot. Why? Because $15 an hour from a guy who bought his store for $300,000, has insurance, has to cover all of the employees, has to cover the stock, has to keep the lights on, has to pay the government a whole bunch of taxes, and he has to pay your taxes. Did you know that part? He has to pay all of the taxes that you pay, he has to double. He has to pay the same exact taxes on each and every paycheck that you get, just for the privilege of hiring you. It's a scam all the way around. You keep screaming taxes are theft. You don't know the half of it. Taxes are a complete scam. Let me go back to the script. Roughly 4 out of 5 companies surveyed by the Richmond Federal Reserve reported hiking up prices for consumers to cover at least some of the input costs they were experiencing. So they were covered. All of this inflation that we're talking about, all of this transitory inflation, all of this supply chain ineptitude, because we had to fire people, we had to fire truckers, we had to fire transporters because they refused to get a certain thing that Brandon mandated. That's why we're having this. This didn't happen under the last president. I won't mention the name. This didn't happen then. This hasn't been happening since January 1 through 5. This happened right after the current president sat in a chair and said, we're going to ban this. We're going to stop this pipeline. We're going to do this. You can't build any more new oil refineries. You can't build any more drilling. We're not going to trade overseas in oil. We're not going to do this for certain transportation. This is what happened. This is what the news, including Fox, is not telling you. That's where the inflation came. It's man-made. In a perfect world, you make a bottle of water. You buy the bottle from a certain company, and you have a facility to put the water into the bottle. Then you contract with a person to deliver the bottle of water. When it's just one bottle of water, that's expensive. You probably pay $10,000 for one bottle of water. But when you say, hey, how about I'm going to buy 50,000 bottles. Oh, now we're talking. Now, if you're going to order 50,000 bottles from me, now I can make an entire factory of bottle making machines. Okay, then I'm going to build a factory to put water into 50,000 bottles a day. Okay, now we're talking. We're going to build an entire factory of water bottling facility. Okay, now you, Mr. Trucker person, I want to be able to transport 50,000 bottles of water a day. Oh, then we're going to hire a whole fleet of trucks. We're going to pay for the trucks. We're going to pay for the containers. And we're going to pay for the shipping method. Okay, now we're going to contract with stores for the stores to buy 50,000 bottles of water from me. Oh, then we're going to have a whole fleet of stores that'll be able to carry the water. Now, let's beef that up to 1 million bottles a day. The stores can now charge half as much, if not a third, or 10% as much, or even 1% as much as they did when you had only one bottle. It's the economy of scale. As you scale up, everything gets cheaper. America, of all places, we should be literally paying pennies for stuff. But for some reason, we're going through this massive inflation. And when I say it's man-made, I mean it's all artificial. It's all artificial. If you have a facility that bottles 1 million bottles of water each and every day, and you have contracts for transporting 1 million bottles of water a day to 50 states, and the stores are going to enjoy massive reduction in cost. Why? Because making a machine that does 1 bottle of water a day is way more expensive than a machine, an entire system and conveyors and all that sort of stuff that makes 1 million a day. If you're making 1 million a day, you can't even think of how much 1 bottle costs. Why? Because it's pennies on the dollars for 10,000 of those, or 100,000 of those. It's pennies on the dollar. Why? Because you don't miss now 1 bottle. You're calculating millions and millions and millions of bottles for the week, for the month, for the quarter. The number is astronomical. of how many bottles of water you can make in 3 months. More than half of the companies surveyed by the Small Business Services Reviews website, digital.com, reported raising prices beyond what was required to offset rising input costs. Input costs is the bottling facilities, the transport trucks. Those are costs. They have to pay for those bottles. They have to pay for the transport. That started rising. That cost started rising. They raised the price not only to cover that rising cost, but they raised it beyond that. Quote, in other words, businesses are inflating already inflated prices in order to turn a bigger profit amid people's fears over uncertain times. The site's small business expert Dennis Consorte said in a statement. Additionally, large firms were more likely to engage in this practice than small businesses, the survey found. Of course, because large companies like Target, Walmart, Albertsons, they're doing selling thousands of bottles of water a day. The ma and pop corner store is not selling thousands of bottles a day. So they can't afford to charge $6 a bottle. But Walmart can, Amazon can, Target can. Why? Because they know that people are so used to buying from them that they're going to continue buying from them. And they're just going to sit home and complain about this. Did you know that a bottle of water is now $6? Guess who is the biggest gainer from record inflation? The U.S. government, which operates on debt, which taxes cannot pay off, which is so out of whack that the debt right now, if it stopped right this second and no more debt was made, couldn't be paid off in 1,000 years with current taxes. You could wipe out all of the money of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Trump, and it wouldn't even put a dent in it. In a week, all of those men's lifelong money, wealth, assets would be wiped out, and not even 1% of the debt would be paid off. Not even 1%. It wouldn't even come to 1% if you wiped out all of their billions. So no, don't open up a savings account. Don't open up a 401k. Okay, maybe open up a 401k if a company will pay 100% matching money into the 401k. That's free money. That's a TikTok meme reference. Imagine working a job and not being paid a 401k on top of your regular salary. Now imagine being told other people are paid matching company 401ks and not getting a job that pays the matching 401k, but thinking you're successful at $15 an hour. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Imagine if you are 18 years old and your father presented to you, okay, son, here's the scoop. You can be an entrepreneur, and which means you take a whole bunch of risk and you build your own whatever. And one day you hope you're successful, and maybe you can do a lot of marketing research and public surveys and what have you. And that's the way you could go in life. Or you could get a job, right? And here's the scope on getting a job. You can get a job that pays you for your time to do this stuff. Or you can get a job with a little bit of skill, and you can invest some of that money that you get on your salary into a 401k, and the company will match all the money that you put into the 401k. I think it's $6,000 a year or something like that. Maybe it's $12,000. I don't know. I don't have a 401k. I don't work for a company. I think it's, let's say $6,000 a year. The company also pays into that 401k $6,000 a year on top of you paying into that $6,000. This is an incentive that the company has made to hire the best people to come work for the company. That's the whole point of that, which was the whole point of also the Obamacare, that companies were paying certain people They were paying their health care, their health insurance, to get the best possible people to come work for them. And the Democrats and the Obama administration came out and said, well, that healthcare should be a right, right? No, that's socialism. Healthcare is a right under socialism, right? Everybody should have healthcare, health insurance. First of all, the bad word here is insurance. Insurance has nothing to do with it. The object of the game is to get the healthcare. The insurance part is paying for the healthcare. And they were confusing people with saying, you need insurance with you need healthcare. No, you don't need insurance for healthcare. You simply need money for healthcare because you have to pay a doctor to come and do his skill on you. So it has nothing to do with insurance. It has everything to do with money to pay the doctor. And instead of tackling that thing, they instead said, everybody should have health insurance. Well, they went a step further and said, everybody will have health insurance and we're going to demand it, although they don't have that power. Regardless of what the Supreme Court said and saying that Obamacare was totally legit and legal, and I believe there's a whole conspiracy theory about them forcing the Chief Justice to agree to that, like they threatened his family and a whole bunch of other nefarious stuff. Regardless of that, I'm a third-year law school student. That is illegal. They do not have the authority under the Constitution to tell you to go and buy anything. They don't have that authority. They don't have the authority to go and tell you, a person, a private citizen, to go do anything. You don't work for the government. You're not a government representative. The Constitution doesn't apply to you. If the Constitution doesn't apply to you, that means that they can't force you to do something. But if you work for the government and you're a representative of the government, the Constitution and all of its limitations applies to you. That way, you could tell somebody, you work for the government? Okay, you have to go buy this. That's because you work for the government. But private citizens, they can't tell you to buy anything. How they're doing this with car insurance, I don't know. But it's another one of those things of it's unconstitutional. They should not be able to tell you this. But they do get by with the states. And the states, you have to look at the law of the state. Anyway, your father would tell you, you can, if you want to go the job route, you can go work for an hourly wage, or you can go work for a salary and work for a company that's going to give you a whole bunch of incentives to come work for them because you're a fantastic employee. And one of those incentives is they're going to match your 401k, an extra $6,000 a year into your 401k, which is going to turn out to be maybe $500,000, maybe $1 million. Just in your 401k alone. That's not talking about your salary. That's not talking about any of the benefits. So it's going to be probably $1 million or more if you work there for 30, 40 years, 50 years, something like that. But people are working 50 years now. They don't retire because they can't afford it. If you work a salary and are taught to open savings account and an IRA, inflation is going to basically render you poor, no matter what you do. No matter what level. I was looking at finally getting my law degree. I'm a third year, right? I'm not graduated and I'm not a full lawyer, right? And we were looking at working on Wall Street or working in England in the city. The city is a section of London. To working as a lawyer or financier in the heart of the financial districts, right? So working as a lawyer or financier in Wall Street here in the United States, or working as a lawyer or financier or lawyer in London, the city, right? Wall Street equals the city in London, right? They said you would have to almost spend, and you'll need a roommate, almost spend your salary to live close by, which is going to be required for you to be hired into those rich Wall Street firms. And so after 6 years, you're going to be stuck in that situation. So you make $200,000, $300,000 a year, but you're paying out $200,000 in all of your expenses because you have to sit there right next to the company, very close to the company. And the rents in those districts are very, very high. So even if you make a tremendous amount of money, the expenditures are going to kill you. They're going to render you basically poor. And a lot of people quit when they do the math. A lot of people quit. They take the job and they go, oh my God, I'm making $150,000 right out of law school. They take the job and then they realize, I have to get a roommate who also makes $150,000 a year. I have to get a roommate. And now that I'm making $300,000 a year, I still have to get a roommate who also makes $300,000 a year. Not only that, I have to get another roommate and another one and another one. And then maybe after 5 years, when your first contract is up, a lot of people quit and they go, oh, I'm going to go to Mayberry. I'm going to go to Paris, Texas and go work there. I'm going to go work in Podunk, Utah and work there. I might make only $60,000 a year, but guess what? I'm probably going to keep most of the $60,000. I'm going to buy the house straight out because I can afford it right now. And then from then on, I'm just going to pay taxes on the property and make $60,000 a year. And I will be rich probably in 10, 20 years. Why? Even off of $60,000 because I know how to invest. I know how to keep my wealth. If you own property and gold and hard assets, inflation is fantastic. If you are a giant corporation that is trying to sell your bottle of water overseas, when the dollar is $1 for every 2 British pound, when the dollar is $1 for every 2 euros, trying to sell a bottle of water over there now comes to $12 per bottle to the consumer. But when inflation hits and the dollar drops to $1 equals 10 cents of the euro, however you say that, $1 equals 10 cents to the British pound, whatever that it comes out to. Now you can sell massive amounts of your bottled water because now your bottled water is cheaper than their own bottled water in England, in Europe, in Germany, in Russia, in China. Inflation helps international sale. It drops the value of the dollar. And now all of the stuff that you sell overseas is so cheap, people buy it by the caseload. Whereas when the dollar is so high, so powerful, and it takes 2 or 3 euros to equal $1, you're not selling anything overseas. But here inside the United States, then your bottled water now sells for 10 cents for each bottle, and a case is $1. Huh? That's inflation. If you're saving your money up when inflation hits, and you got savings account, your $100 that you saved yesterday is now worth $10. That's how that works. But if you're having deflation, your $100 is now $1,000. They don't want deflation. They don't ever want deflation, and they don't want to go back to a stronger dollar. I hope this helped everybody. Thank you all for watching.